Hey guys, welcome to Indie Game Hustle. My name is Charles, and in this video, we're going to take a look at maybe setting up our keyboard and our controller input buttons before we continue on with blocking and all of those other mechanical things with our player. The reason I'm doing this is so that we don't get lost in the sauce here with basically, having our keys mapped to all these random different keys and whatnot. We don't want to do that. We want to just kind of get this taken care of earlier than later. So I've already kind of started working with it and just kind of getting some ideas. And I figured I will just go ahead and show you what I got so far. So what I think I want to do with this is that I would like a notification to pop up when you decide to use either the keyboard or you push a button on the controller. So what I did is let's see here. I went to Game Creator, I hit Preferences, and the first thing I did is created a variable called Joystick Active. And so this is going to switch based on a certain input. So if we hit the controller, it means it's active. And when we hit the keyboard, it's going to be false. So controller true, keyboard false. And so we have a condition set up to do that. So of course, if you're not, I'm sure you've been following along in how to create a variable. But of course, if this is your first video, you would simply put in your variable name, hit the plus key, and then you would assign it a name and a type, bool, and there's different ones, of course, and then leave this value set to false. This is true, this is false, and I don't use the tags here. I haven't found a use for it yet, but I'm sure there is a use for it. But anyway, so let me go ahead and close this down. That's fine for now. You can say, okay, so over here in the hierarchy, I created inside my mechanics prefab here, I have something called notice. Okay, now basically this is just a notice. I haven't actually changed any of the keys yet. We would have to do that directly on the triggers themselves. But in terms of the different notices, so for instance, I have a trigger here called trigger input notice joy 1. Really, that's joystick. I'm sorry, not joy 1, but joy 0. So that's joystick 0. And that joystick is actually referencing a button on the joystick. And let me show you what that looks like. And what I have here is I went to basically, I searched in Google and just typed in Unity 360 controller. And it's usually the first one, but basically this here is going to be the, what do you call it? The URL for it. And if you go down to the bottom, this is going to be Windows and Mac. I'm using Windows, so this is just a general 360 controller. Pretty much the same if you're using like an Xbox One type of controller, like the newer ones. But this is the button here, so the letter A, right? Which is really 0. We have 1, we got 2, 3, and so on and so forth. So we have the axis triggers are in the back. We have 5 and 4 here for those top triggers, buttons on the top, and so on and so forth. So it's pretty self-explanatory, and there's just some more information here just to kind of explain certain things. But this is pretty much all we need to get going with that. So with that said, so if I were to look at this trigger and see what it's made of, this trigger is going to say on key down. So you would choose, in this case, you would select the trigger, and it's going to be an input. And then you would say on key down, and we're going to select hit the letter J on the keyboard until you get to joystick. And then you just hit this little black arrow here down at the bottom, and you can see all the different joystick buttons that correlate to the actual 360 controller that we saw in the URL. Right, so joystick button 0 is going to be the A button on the keyboard, on the joystick. And so when you hit this, we have a condition for it to check a few things. So you would just create a condition, and then you would have a condition that as a child of the trigger. And in our condition, we have a few things going on. The first one is if joystick 0 is pressed, so it's checking if this is just pressed and this is set to false. So both of these conditions have to be true in order for it to actually do the certain actions here. So if this is pressed and if the variable is set to, if it's already false, then the action here is going to be change this variable to true, and then we have it currently showing a message. So this message is basically a basic message is just going to show joystick active, and let me show you how that works. So let me just go ahead and show you the other way around as well. So we have the keyboard here. So I just created joystick and keyboard. These are pretty much empty prefabs. Sorry, not prefabs, but game objects. And so just for naming conventions here. So we have keyboard. So trigger, input notice, keyboard, key space. So same thing, condition or key down space, which is space bar. And then the condition is, of course, if this is pressed and this is currently true, then we need to change this to false and then show this particular message. Okay. Now I do have some messages down here. If else, like else, do something else, but I'm not gonna mess with that because I don't think that is useful right now, and I'm not sure if that's working. So, but let's go ahead and test it and just confirm that that is working. So I'm gonna go hit play here, and let me grab my 360 controller here off of the floor because it fell. And so now I have my controller, and I'm just gonna go ahead and see this here. So I hit the button here, keyboard, the button was pressed, and then when I hit the keyboard, so boom, that happened. So now we can jump. I'm using the keyboard to jump on the space bar. Now I'm gonna select the controller. Boom, keyboard active. So it's just letting the player know that, hey, we're aware that you're using the controller, or now we're aware the keyboard is active, or the joystick is active, or the keyboard is active. So it's switching based on whether or not a button is pressed on it. So it's pretty simple. It's not overly complicated. It's just a logical, like a logic perspective of how to approach it. And so I'm sure there's other ways to go about things like this, but this is just how I came up with it. And so the goal now is to do this for all of the different buttons that are going to be useful or playable with either the keyboard or with the controller, because we want the game to be used with either or. Whatever one you prefer, I mean, you could just make it keyboard only, but some people like controllers, right? And I enjoy playing platforming games with controllers as opposed to a keyboard, but that's just me. So either way, you want it to work and feel good, regardless of what, what are you using? Like, it doesn't matter. So in this case, so what we're going to do is start to set these things up. Okay. All right. So I do have a few things here. I kind of already written out what I think may be a good button layout for some of the different mechanics that we're going to be using. So basically, we're going to have jumping. Obviously, for movement, it's going to be WASD for the keyboard. For attacking, I think I'm going to go with the shift as opposed to the actual mouse. So the left shift is going to be for attacking. Left control will be for interacting. So maybe talking to people or picking something up in the scene. So that would be really easy for your finger to just kind of shift down, for maybe your pinky finger to shift down. In terms of the camera, so as it stands right now, the camera is currently movable with the mouse in this case, right? So right now I can click and drag the camera. And so I may not want this to happen, because as I was thinking about controller movement, I was also thinking about whether or not the game is going to have a movable camera. And I haven't thought that through yet, but I'm getting a sneaking suspicion that I may actually want to do this where, depending on the area that your character is in, the camera will position itself based on what we want the player to see. There's two reasons to do this. For one, it simplifies your level designing, and it just simplifies the gameplay, so you can just kind of focus on what is important. And so if your camera is only from this point of view, you may not need to model all of this back here. You can focus on what the level is going to look like from this perspective only. Okay, so just keep those types of things in mind. That will help us save time. The player's never going to see past or beyond what's back here. So you would just focus on, say, this area here. So that will be one reason why we may decide that. Now, every 3D platforming game may not be like that. And so, again, like I said, that we can change that. But for now, that's what I'm thinking. But we can go about it at a different, we can think about that at a different time. But for now, let's just focus on the button inputs. Okay, so. All right, so since the camera, we're thinking it may be static. The next thing we're thinking is blocking. I'm thinking maybe a right mouse click and hold would be for our blocking. So if we're walking up to an enemy, we might want to hold down that button to block. That may be pretty good. So in terms of the joystick controller, or the 360 controller, or the gamepad, in other words, I was thinking that, of course, the left analog is going to be for movement. The letter A on the Xbox controller is going to be for jump. The X is going to be for attacking. The right button on the top of it, not the triggers, but those top buttons, I think they're called bumpers. That is going to be, the right one's going to be for blocking, and the left one is going to be for run. I was thinking that. And then the letter B on the controller will be your interaction button. So I was thinking that's going to be for talking, picking up things, opening doors, maybe if there's doors or at all, those types of things. Anything that requires interaction, I'm thinking that may be the way we want to go with that with the controller. Now, of course, like I said, if we decide to move the camera for whatever reason, we'll use the right analog stick, of course, to rotate the camera. Cool? All right, so the first thing I want to do is just continue creating the inputs for the joystick. And again, this is just for the notification. We actually I haven't changed any of the actual triggers that these are going to affect just yet. All right, so the first one, we already have the button, the 0. We have 1. So in terms of the controller, that's going to be A and B. So 0 is A and 1 is B. Okay, so what we're going to do now is do X. And X is going to be joystick or joypad, whatever, number 2. So let's go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do is do a Control D on this, and then I'll rename it, and I'll go in. And of course, you can pause the video so you can get caught up with what I'm doing. So what we're going to do is go ahead and take a look at what we got. So the first thing you want to do is, I'm selecting this joystick 2. I'm going to go over here where it says joystick button 1. We're going to change this to joystick button 2. So I'm going to, once you click this, just hit the J key a couple times and you see button 2. That's right. So we got that there, and we're not done quite yet. I'm going to go to conditions, and we need to change this as well. So I'm going to change this to joystick 2. All right, great. And I think that is it. Okay, great. And so we have actions and that sort of thing. All right, perfect. All right, so I think that works just fine. We're going to leave that there. All right, and just to confirm that that is working, I'm going to hit the play button and grab the controller. And I'm going to go ahead and hit the X button on the controller. And it is working indeed. Hit the space bar. Keyboard active, hit the X. Joystick active. Okay, great. All right. All right, so that's working fine. So now we can just go ahead and continue forward here and do another one. I'm going to go ahead and do a Control D. Go ahead and minimize that. And we're going to do the same thing for this one. I'm going to rename this one. And I will do, let's go ahead and do 4. Or we can do 3. Do I have a Y set up? I'm not using Y yet, but I think I'll just go ahead and map it. And the reason is because I haven't decided in terms of how to pull up a menu, and I like to hit the Y button to pull up a menu. So kind of like an RPG, but even though this is not an RPG, we can still use it to pull up a menu. We can also use the select or start button on the Xbox controller. Though it's called back and start, so that would be button 6 and then button 7. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and set it to be joystick number 3, and I'll go ahead and do that here. And we can always change this, of course, but for now, I'm just going to go ahead and set it to 3 because I'm thinking maybe the menu can do that. Maybe it can be a special thing. I don't know, but for now, we're going to do menu for the Y button. And I'm going to go into the condition as well and go ahead and change this to button 3. All right, great. All right, so that should be just fine. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and continue on. I'm going to do a Control D. And of course, I'm not going to do it on every button on the controller. I want this to really just work on just the buttons that we're using. Now, of course, you could just set up an input notice on every button, and that would make sense because you're touching or using a controller. However, when it comes to the keyboard, I want it to just be the keys that you hit, right? Not all the keys on the keyboard that, because you touched it. So maybe there's some limits to that. Maybe I just don't know how to do it, but I think this may just be the easiest way for me to approach it. So in terms of 4, I'm going to do input 4. Okay, so joystick button 4, hit the J key and go down to 4. And again, like I said before, the 4 is going to be for our, I believe, for the left, so it's going to be run. So this is our run notice. So, all right, great. And then what I'll do is go ahead and go into the conditions and change this as well. And I know this can be tedious, but this is just part of how these things work. So don't feel any type of way as to this is taking too long. This is just the process of doing things like this. I'm sure someone has a faster way of doing it, but for now, I think I'm just going to approach it the way that I know how to do it until I find a new solution. All right, so that one's good. The next one's going to be 5, so let's go ahead and Control D that one. And I'll just go ahead and change it to 5. And then I will take this all the way down to joystick 5. And I will go ahead and change this as well. Okay, awesome. All right, so we got joystick 5. We'll have those 2 little bumper buttons on the top. Okay, so 4 and 5, 0, 1, 2, and 3. I think we're good there in terms of the buttons. I'm not sure if we can do the access, like if you're using the actual analogs yet. So I'm not sure if that would work. So I'll look into that, and maybe we can come back to that to see if that's something we can get some input on. Because I don't think there is. I'll check it now just to see, but I don't think this is just usually for key down and key up type stuff. So you're not going to get like accesses and things like that when it comes to that. So now joystick, for instance, joystick button 8 is the analog, but it's really a button when you press in the analog stick on the controller, it kind of goes in. So, but for now, I think we're good. We're just going to go ahead and let it rock with just the buttons for now. Okay. All right, perfect. All right, so we're going to do the same thing. Delete this one. So we're going to do the same thing for the keyboard. Okay. All right, so what I'll do is go ahead and do the same thing for the keyboard. So I will do a Control D, and instead of the space bar, we're going to do left shift for attack. So I'm just going to name it left shift. And I'll just simply change this to, I think it's going to be left shift. There we go. All right, perfect. All right, so we have left shift there, and I just need to change it as well, the same location here. This one here. Whoops. And left shift. All right. And then the next one is going to be for interaction. It's going to be the left control key, right? So I'll go ahead and set that up. Do a Control D. And we're just going to do left control. And I'll change it here as well. Left control. Cool. And then I'll change it as well inside of the condition. So instead of left shift, it's going to be left control. All right. And then the next one is going to be right mouse click for the blocking. So what I'll do is do a Control D. And I'll just name this left mouse beat. There we go. And I will change it as well. In terms of the mouse, I think it's going to be, I think it's one left. Oh, no. Is it left that I want to do? Hold or right? I want right. I think it's going to be mouse one. I'll test it, but I think it's mouse one. And then same thing here. And just hit the M, mouse one. Awesome. So let's just make sure I'm good there. So I have spacebar is good. Left shift is good. Let's see what else. Interaction for left control is good. Blocking is good. Am I missing anything? Blocking and running. Maybe running I'm missing. So maybe I need to rethink that. So in terms of left shift for running, maybe I'll do that. So let me get that one in there. So what we have for left shift already. We have attacking for left shift, of course. All right, so maybe what we'll do, just to be nice, is leave left shift here, of course. And just like we have a left mouse button, I think maybe attacking will just be your clicking, your left mouse button. Right mouse button. This should be right mouse button. And then we'll do a left mouse button as well. And that'll be our attack. And so that will go that route. I think that may work better. All right, cool. So now I just need to change this to mouse 0 and change this one to mouse 0. All right, cool. All right, so that's how we're gonna go about that, and we're good. So we have 6, 1, 2, 3, we have 5 here. We'll figure it out. I think that should be good. If we run into any issues, we'll definitely go about this. All right, so now that we know kind of what our button inputs are supposed to be, so now what I want to do is go ahead and apply certain things. So jump is already pretty much there. So we have jump for joystick. I have jump listed for joystick button 0 on key down. So let's see here. Now I believe by default that jump is assigned to the spacebar. right? By default. Yep, it is. So there's not a whole lot we need to do in terms of this. So what we can do is I already have the key down here for joystick button 0. Okay. And so I don't have to do anything else here. So that one's fine. So if we picked up the game controller and hit the A key on the controller, it should just simply jump and be good to go. So there we go. And so that's working just fine. Just like the analog stick is already working. Of course, there's no camera movement with the right analog stick, but for now, we're good. So that works pretty good. All right, so let me go ahead and hit play there. So I think we're good in terms of this here. Let's take a look at run. So what do we say? We think we're going to do run for the keyboard to be shift. And so right now we already had it set to left shift, so that's fine. That's probably natural. So what we can do for the keyboard, for the joystick, is set it up to where we have another trigger input and have it set up to where basically when you run, you can also do the joystick buttons. So to do that, as you can see, let me see right now. So look here, we have key down and key up. And so when we run, we have to hold down the shift, just like so, right? And then when you let go, oops, there we go. See, so up and down. So what I want to do is have it to where the controller is going to be actually doing that. So what I can do now is simply go trigger. And here I'm going to do the button for joystick button input key. Let's see, on key down, we're going to do joystick 4. Okay. All right. And now in terms of these particular action slots, what I want to do, I believe, and I don't want to mess anything up, but all I need to do is hit this here, hit this plus key. And by hitting the plus key, it basically creates an action slot without creating an additional action. Okay, and if you select this, you can actually switch this between conditions and actions. So that's pretty useful. All right, so all we need to do is do on key down, just like this on key down. We need to set and move these actions into here. So to do that, all we have to do is say on key down, set run speed. Boom. And then we'll do another trigger. And we'll do input. Whoops. Input. And we're going to do on key on key up. And we're going to change it to the same button. So it's going to be joystick 4. And I'm going to hit this plus key. And we're going to do set walk speed. And that's it. All right, cool. So that should work. Hopefully it works. All right, so I'm going to hit the play button. All right. See? So now we're walking up just like that. Just like that. Perfect. So yeah, it feels okay. I think I can rock with that. Up, down. And if I go back to the keyboard, there we go. And if I go back to that button, it's working. Perfect. All right, great. All right, I like it. All right, cool. And let's see here. And so we're good there. So that's working out pretty good. So remember, if we need to change anything with the actions in terms of run, we're just messing with these actions. So we don't need to do anything with this unless you need to change the actual inputs that's necessary here for it. So it works out pretty good. All right, so we're done with run. So we're gonna do crawl now. Now let's see if we have a crawl. I'm not sure if I set crawl up. Crawl was a funny one. Now for the keyboard crawl, we could set crawl up to be, let's see here. We could set crawl to be on the keyboard to be like the letter C or something like that, like something kind of simple. So let's just take a look and see what I already have. So I have left control for crawling. And of course, I don't think I want to do that. I could do it. I don't think that is bad, but I do have interaction for control. So I think we'll just, to keep it easy, we'll just do the letter C for crawl. But on the controller, however, that one's a little different. So we could go with, because we don't have a menu, and because I haven't decided where to put the menu, I'm just going to put it on 3 just for now, because I haven't decided if the menu should just be more classic-like and you just hit like the start button to call the menu. So what I'll just do is do a trigger, and what I'll do is, let's see here. We could, interesting enough, I was just thinking actually while I'm thinking about this, it's possible that crawl can be the same as maybe picking up an object, but that would be interaction. And so, nah, I'm just going to go with 3 for now. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go input on key down, and we're just going to go joystick 3 for now. And I'm gonna hit this plus key, and then I'm gonna change it to conditions, and I'm just gonna take this condition and put it here. So now when we hit the Y key, it should give us the Y button on the controller. He should crawl. So let's see if that works. All right, perfect. All right, good. All right, so he's crawling, and if I go faster, should be good to go. All right, cool. All right, so now I need to change something else. So just a second. So that's working fine. And so now we need to look at crawl run. Now, in terms of him running faster, we also have to change the key down. It'd be nice if we can do multiple keys within here. I don't know if you can. Actually, I've never tried that. Actually, it's a good question. No, you can't do it. I don't think so. I don't know what this is. I've never seen this before. I've never used it. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't know what this is, but that's fine. Obviously I'm not gonna use that, but I have to look that up. But for now, we're just gonna continue on with the part that we do know. All right, so we're gonna go with trigger, and then I'm gonna do on key down, and then I'm gonna just go ahead and create another trigger and do an on key up. And then for this one, since it's going to be running, we know it's going to be joystick number 4. So we want the crawl speed to increase based on that key, and the same thing with this one. Okay, and just go ahead and hit this plus key for both, and then I'm going to take the actions. So set run speed or set walk speed. So in this case, I'm going to take this, and I'm going to take this action and move it here. Run, walk. I'll probably rename that to crawl, but that's fine for now. So let's just confirm that that is working. Because when you're crawling, that is only active when you're crawling, right? So if I go down, see how it's doing what we already had set up. So now if I'm crawling, now we're moving a little faster. Just like that. Boom, 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 boom. All right, cool. All right, so that's working pretty good. All right. And let me just make sure that keyboard's active, and then crawling is active. Keyboard crawling. Just like that. All right, cool. All right, working out pretty good. All right, so we're done with crawl and crawl run. So now in terms of picking up an item, we decided that that's going to be like our interaction. So that's going to be like the control key. So what I'll do is go ahead and switch it up. So, and I'm almost thinking I want to switch it to interaction to be C, because it's like I feel like I'll interact with things more than I would crawl. And crawling is something you just toggle off and on. I guess interaction is too. I don't know. That's something we can always change later. So I'm just going to go ahead and do pickup. And let's just go ahead and take a look at that. Now, we have to find the key part. And so here it is here. So we just have two conditions. So picking up object, that one has a condition, and then putting down has a condition. There's nothing. Pick up large is the same thing. So we just have it right here. So these are just checking. Remember, just checking a few things. So what I'll do is go ahead and do an add component. And I'm going to do it on key down. And since we have the key code set for C for the interaction, I'm going to use control. So let's go ahead and do that. Control. It's going to be left control, right? Yeah. All right. And all right, cool. All right, so that one's going to be, did I change it? All right, so left control, right? And then for the keyboard, for the joypad, the interaction button was going to be the letter B. So that's going to be joystick button 1. I just feel like it's going to feel much better on a controller, just because, like for first-person shooting games, I believe that we already know how that should feel and whatnot, and what buttons should work for certain things. But hitting the control, I feel like it's gonna feel a little extra, but we'll see. But for the controller, I think it'll feel more natural, but we'll see. So I'm gonna hit this and change this conditions to that. So I'm just gonna open this up and move this conditions here, just like that. So that's for the on key down, and that's for picking up the object. Okay, great. So that's great. So now we need to put down the object, and so we need to just select that one, and then I'm going to go add component trigger. I'm going to go to input, and I'm going to go to on key down. I'm going to put that condition. Oops. See, what I did was I clicked the wrong one. I'll just hit delete on this. And I'm going to get rid of that. So we have the condition. So for the put down, it's going to be, we need to do this to left control. And then this one is going to be joystick 1. And then the conditions, I'm just going to simply pull this and put this there. Perfect. All right, so let's confirm that that is working from both a keyboard and controller perspective. All right, so I'm going to go over to an item to pick up. So let's just pick up this small box. So I'm going to hit the left control. Perfect. And we're going to be able to still run and jump and do what we need to do. And I'm just gonna let it go. Perfect. And then I'm gonna move over to the controller, and I'm going to hit the button to pick up. So there we go. And we have that. And we're jumping. This is all with the controller. There we go. I touched the water. I think automatically we had it set to do that. Yeah. And that works out pretty good. All right, great. All right. So that seems like it's working good. All right, so I'm going to hit play. All right, great. So we have the pickup for the small objects. We have to do the same thing for the large. I know it's tedious, but it is what we have to do, at least the way that I'm implementing it. So trigger, change and do input, key down. I'm going to, again, change this to left control. And then I'm going to change this to joystick 1. And I'm simply going to change that to conditions. And I'm going to move this condition here. No need to create brand new conditions just for that. And then that should work fine. So next, I'm just going to do the same thing here. Trigger, change this to left control. And of course, remember, you can set it to whatever you want, whatever feels comfortable to you. This is just so that we have some type of base. And so I'm going to do input and key down. And then I'm going to change it to joystick number 1. And I'm going to hit this plus key, hit this here to change this to conditions. And then I'm just going to open up my trigger to drag that particular condition into there. All right. And so, of course, we want to check it to make sure it's working properly. We're going to go pick up a larger item now using left control. And you should be moving slower. Put it down. All right, perfect. And then I'll do the same thing with this. Perfect. All right, great. Working out pretty good. All right. All right, so that's picking up a small and large object. Next thing is swimming. Of course, there is no button input for swimming. That is simply if you're in the water. So that has nothing to do with it. The last one is going to be attacking. So we have the draw that starts automatically. Now, of course, I have a trigger to start automatically. When the game starts, you automatically draw a weapon. Now, of course, you can draw a weapon and sheath a weapon. That's not this type of game, but that is something that you could look into doing. But for now, we have that drawing a weapon. Attacking is where our key is. So we have currently mouse 1 for attacking. And I think, like I said, we changed it up a little bit because we were going to do left shift for attacking. I was going to do that. But you know what? I think this is going to feel better if I actually hit the button, the mouse button to do it. So what I'll do is go ahead and change this to mouse 0, just like that. And then in terms of the controller, that's just going to simply be the X button. Okay, so I'm going to go trigger, and I'm just going to go input, and on key down, we're going to do the joystick 2 for X, and go ahead and create an actions. So it's there, and we're going to go into the attack trigger and grab this action and put it here like so. So now we have the mouse and the button just like that. All right, so if I go in here with the controller, so now we are using the controller to move. Camera's not doing anything, but I'm now on the controller and it feels natural. And I can do everything with the controller. I will say I may try to change the run to one of the triggers on the back of the controller as opposed to the bumpers. I think they're called bumpers. It just feels natural to run with those, so I'll look into that. but for now, this works pretty good. And if I want to pick this up, I can pick it up, and that's really slow. Don't want an enemy following us while you're carrying a heavy object, right? But with a smaller object, we will be okay. Now it looks like we can still swing when we're carrying, so just keep that in mind. Change that, and that's an easy thing we can do. All right, great. And that's the way it works. All right, great. So the controller and the keyboard is active, and it also gives us the ability to kind of notifies you that you're using the keyboard now. And so that works out pretty good. Now, it's a good thing we didn't name these over here where it says joystick, like Joy 1 attack, Joy 2. We can after we're all set, everything is said and done. But for now, we're still trying to figure that out. So I don't think it's necessary to name these. We just wanted to make sure that the variables are changing and everything at least recognizes that, hey, you're using a keyboard. Hey, you're using a joystick. Cool. All right. All right, so I think that's going to be it in terms of setting up our, kind of redoing our keys. I mean, that's something we could have thought about earlier, right? But it was just an afterthought, trying to make sure that that the buttons are at least in a place where it's consistent with maybe the overall gameplay. And then knowing where it's at, we can always go back and update these types of things later on. All right, so right now I'm using the keyboard and mouse, and so I'm using the input, the left mouse button to attack, and right now the right mouse button is not doing anything, and that's simply because we haven't set up blocking yet. So that's going to be something we're going to look at in our next video in terms of being able to block an attack and go from there. All right, so I will see you guys in the next video. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. For the next set of videos, I'll be releasing one every day at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. So to stay up to date on the latest 3D platforming tutorial, feel free to subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to support, you can find me on Patreon, or of course you can hit me up on Discord. I like to talk about whatever project you guys are working on. Of course, thanks for hanging with me. Your support is always appreciated. As always, remember, never give up and keep moving forward. Peace.